All right. Good morning, PTNI's daily show. Happy Friday morning to you all out there. Hope your Friday is off to a better start than mine. Dealing with some stomach stuff this morning. I found the limit of meal prepped food. You probably shouldn't eat stuff that you meal prepped 2 weeks ago. You will pay for it. So being too prepared does have a penalty. So hanging out at home today on the mend here on Fitness Athlete Friday. Before we get started, let's talk about some courses we have coming up really quickly. Speaking of Fitness Athlete, you can join Mitch and I next weekend here at home base at CrossFit Fenton for CMFA Live. That's next weekend. Also next weekend, Jessica Davis will be down at her home base in Pittsburgh teaching Performing Artist Management. Got a couple online courses coming up. We have Modern Managing the Older Adult online coming up September 22nd. Fitness Athlete Advanced Concepts September 29th, and then Fitness Athlete Essential Foundation starts up again, the last course of the year, on October 14th. Before we get started, big shout out to Dr. Ryan Bean of University of Michigan Flint DPT program. He teaches their Therex course, among other courses. He brought all of his students down to CrossFit Fenton yesterday to work with Mitch and I on the squat and deadlift. So we spent yesterday taking second-year PT students through the basics of the squat and the deadlift, coaching, correcting, cueing, and how to regress and progress those movements for patients. So that was a super fun way to spend our Thursday. So big shout out to Dr. Bean for exposing his students to some functional movement on a Thursday afternoon. So speaking of nutrition, let's talk about nutrition today on Fitness Athlete Friday. Let's talk about the very basics of nutrition, not to get too deep into the weeds, but I think it is important that we know a little bit more about nutrition, especially for the active individual. We are getting a lot more comfortable as a profession talking about the basics of nutrition, about eating more plants and eating healthier in general, but getting a little bit into the weeds on nutrition for performance, nutrition for fat loss, and not just to lose weight in general, but to try and cut body fat off and maintain muscle mass for our active individuals. And so the first point I'll make is to know your rules, right? Getting into this territory as a PT can be, I don't want to say risky, but certainly we can rub some feathers. So it's really important that you know your state laws, your state rules on what you can and cannot do, what you need to be aware of. In some states, there's no restriction on what you can talk about. You can talk about anything nutrition-wise. You can help people all the way down to the level of adjusting their macronutrients, things like that. There's no restriction that you might have. You may be on the other end of the spectrum and live in a state where you're not even really supposed to discuss the basics of nutrition. And most of us live in a state with a gray area where we can kind of dabble in the middle and talk about nutrition broadly as it relates to health and fitness. So just know your rules before you venture out on this. Make sure you know where you're supposed to go and where you're supposed to be. The big point I want to make first before we get too deep is just know that everyone is different. Flexibility is key. A lot of general recommendations work for some people, but they won't work for most. If general recommendations worked for most people, we wouldn't be here talking about this kind of stuff, right? If just giving somebody a diet template was that simple, then we'd be out of a job, right? So just know that we need to be flexible with people. We need to know their goals. But there are some general recommendations we can make that will hold true for most individuals. The first, especially with our active folks, is they probably need to eat more protein. What we see with active individuals is this kind of paradox shift where active folks may not be getting enough protein and sedentary folks may be getting too much protein. So active folks who are watching what they eat, maybe eating more vegetables, maybe eating more raw food, may actually not be getting enough protein, versus folks who may be eating a lot of fast food or processed food are probably actually getting more protein than they need. So where should we be on the protein spectrum? We should be around 1.8 to 2.2 kilograms or grams per kilogram of body weight. So for somebody that weighs 220 pounds or 100 kilos, that's between 180 and 220 grams of protein on the upper end. How should that be broken down? That should be broken down throughout the day in at least servings of 25 grams per serving. of protein. So a lot of research showing that if you are somebody that kind of snacks and grazes all day and you only maybe get 10 to 15 grams of protein a serving throughout the day, you may not be getting enough protein to really engage that muscle protein synthesis that we want to help with muscle repair as an active individual. So somewhere between 1.8 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight, and make sure that you're getting at least 25 grams of protein when you are sitting down to eat a meal or eat a snack. I'm not a snacker. I find 4-ish large meals a day does me in pretty well, but if you are somebody that is eating every few hours, make sure that you're hitting 25 grams of protein in a serving. What about carbs? What's the evidence behind carbohydrates? For the longest time, the research and kind of the methodology was that we needed to carb load before exercise, and the research is now showing that unless we're going to be doing a maximal event, unless you're going out to run 10 miles, a marathon, a triathlon, a max effort weightlifting meet, some sort of max effort event, then carb loading doesn't really have a significant effect on these submaximal training events that we're doing every day. So if you're just going to the gym to train, you're just going to the track to train to get in some productive volume, but not necessarily maximum effort, then carb loading isn't going to really benefit you. Now, what about fasting? A lot of stuff on there about fasting, intermittent fasting, 16 to 8 fasting, 20 to 4 fasting. There is some evidence, some stuff that just came out this year that shows being fasted before resistance training does have a little bit of an impairment compared to eating some carbs earlier in the morning or in the day before you perform some resistance training. So that's, and I'll link these articles in the comments here. That's Narudin 2019, just finding that folks who had some carbs before they performed resistance training, even just in a training session, did perform better to those who were fasted. For weight loss in general, for body fat loss in general, the evidence coming out is really overwhelming that there's no difference between those who do intermittent fasting and those who do not. So if you like to fast. I'm somebody that likes to do a 16 to 8 fasting cycle. I just prefer to wake up and exercise on an empty stomach. I've been doing that. That's a habit from the Army. I've been doing that for, man, almost 15 years now. That's how I prefer my schedule. That's how I feel the best. But if you don't feel the best, if you feel like you need to eat before you work out, then eat before you work out. So the evidence out there just showing no real difference in weight loss, body fat loss between those who do intermittent fasting and those who do not. Water, where should we be at water? Water really hasn't changed much. You should drink to thirst, and you should aim to get about 128 ounces a day. Obviously, if you're active outside sweating, you may need on the higher end of that and maybe even a little bit more than that. If you're inside all day in an air-conditioned gym, air-conditioned office building, you're not really sweating, you're not really losing a lot of body water, then maybe we're on the lower end of that. But that's a good landmark to try and hit is a gallon a day or 128 ounces per day. Beyond that, we just need to know what the athlete's goals are. Are you looking to gain strength and mass? Okay, if you are, then we know we have to be in a hypocaloric diet. We know we need to be eating more food than normal, and expect that with that, we cannot just gain muscle mass and not body fat. The two are very closely linked. Vice versa, if you are looking to lose body fat, to lose body weight, the name of the game is calorie deficit. However we create that, cutting calories, increasing activity, to lose weight, to lose body fat, we need to create that calorie deficit. That's the thing people do not want to hear, but it's just physics, right? If you want to gain mass, you have to eat more calories. If you want to lose it, you have to cut those calories. It doesn't need to mean you need to starve yourself, but we do need to create that energy deficit for that weight loss, that body fat loss to occur. And again, muscle mass and body fat go hand in hand. So as we're cutting body fat, it's normal to expect a little bit of loss of muscle mass as well. And so the name of the game there is to continue to perform resistance training, even while you are reducing your calories and increasing your activity, to make sure that we're maximizing the amount of muscle mass that we hang on to. And finally, there's a third group, which is probably most people that are active, is just a group of people that want to maintain and perform. They're maybe not interested in losing body fat. They might not be interested in gaining muscle mass, but they just want to be active and kind of maintain where they're at. And so that's would be called, an isocaloric maintenance sort of phase, and those folks just need to find how many calories a day they need to maintain where they're at and make sure they hover around that number. We'll talk more about that here in a second. The next part is something that most people don't want to hear. This next point is that like a fat loss phase, a cutting phase, is for advanced users. Most people, that's their goal. They want to lose weight. They want to lose body fat. That's understandable. But that is reserved for somebody who has a really good handle on their schedule and their eating, somebody who understands the importance of sleep in regulating fat loss and kind of overall metabolism, and somebody who understands the effects that alcohol has on that as well. Most people immediately want to jump into cutting as much body fat as possible, and they don't understand all of the different variables that are involved in that. Especially folks who may already be under eating. Talking with our in-house nutritionist at the gym, I'm still surprised, but I shouldn't be surprised with how many people come in to see him who are eating 600 calories a day, 800 calories a day, and they're saying, I just can't lose any more weight, and it's like not surprising that they're under eating. So first things first, most of those folks need to start eating more food. They need to understand the effects that sleep and alcohol and not starving themselves have on fat loss. So understanding that really getting dialed in and trying to cut a lot of body fat is for somebody that has a really good handle on all of those other variables first. Showing consistency with those variables first, and then moving into a fat loss phase. The last part I want to touch on today, this last key point, is again something people don't want to hear, but they need to hear, is that you can't track and you can't measure change if you aren't measuring anything. So a couple really cool articles. This article is older than dirt. It's almost 30 years old. Lichtman, back in 1992, looking at folks, asking them to report what they think they ate, and then actually measuring what they ate, and then report what they think they burned in physical activity, and then actually measuring that, and finding a massive discrepancy, finding that folks underreported their consumption by as much as 63% and overestimated their physical activity by as much as 75%. So folks on average said, hey, I ate 1,700 calories today, actually ate 2,400 calories that day, and said, I think I burned about 1,000 calories today, but only burned about 750. So when left to their own devices, folks tend to underreport what they eat and overreport how much they move. So keeping that in mind, that recall is not very useful. And this article was not saying that these people were being facetious and lying. It was just saying people are naturally incapable of understanding how much food they put in their body a day if they aren't tracking it, and how much activity they perform a day if they aren't tracking it. Another paper, Archer 2018, found very similar results, just showing that recall is not very useful. So what does that mean? That means we need to maybe measure, and folks don't want to get into calorie counting and macro counting because it takes a lot of time. I count my macros and calories. I don't think it takes a lot of time, but I'm also used to it by now. But what I would challenge you all to do and have these folks do is not to commit to measuring everything they eat for the rest of their life, but take a week. Weigh yourself Monday morning. Track everything you eat with millions and millions of apps that are out there. Track everything that you eat for a week. Weigh yourself again. Did your weight go up? Did it go down? Did it stay the same? That gives you a good idea of kind of where you need to be at calorie-wise to meet your goals, whether you're trying to lose weight, gain weight, or just maintain. And folks don't want to hear that they need to measure that, but we know that recall is just not accurate when we're trying to get control of our weight loss or our weight gain as far as calories are concerned. And certainly if we're concerned that we're under eating protein, we need to be tracking that too to make sure that we're hitting those protein goals. So that's a little crash course. Obviously, we can get super deep into the weeds on this, but those are just some basic points to hit with your active folks out there. Whether you're seeing them in the clinic, you're seeing them in the gym, they're coming up to you with questions, hitting topics like protein, hitting topics like fasting, fat loss phases, and measuring what you're eating and your macros, at least for a week, to see where you're at. I always recommend, if this isn't your jam, it's not my jam. I enjoy reading about it. I enjoy talking about it with others, but it's not my passion. And so having a referral source is super, super huge. We're super lucky at the gym to have an in-house nutritionist who has an office in the gym, who works with all the athletes at the gym and folks from the community, and being able to send people over to him. His name is Billy. Is a really great resource to have. So having somebody like that, whether or not they're at your clinic or gym or out in the community, just knowing a nutritionist out there, knowing a dietitian out there that you can send somebody to, is a huge, huge help, especially if you don't have time or don't have the passion to really get people dialed in on their nutrition like this, or if you can't, if it's outside your scope of practice and you actually can't do it, knowing that person out in the community is a big, big help. Really quickly, I'll just share some accounts that I like to follow for nutrition-based stuff. And again, I'll post these in the comments. On Instagram, JPS_education. Brad Schoenfeld, a lot of you know Brad Schoenfeld from Strength and Conditioning, Alan Aragon, Spencer Nadolski, and then Eddie Joe. They all share nutrition stuff in a really digestible but evidence-based way. So they take research articles and make really nice infographics that makes it easy to digest. Those are great accounts to follow. I'll post those here in a second. I always recommend people to talk with Billy, our nutritionist, if you're interested at all. I'll share his link here too. And then if you're interested in just sending people to kind of a more generalized source that maybe you don't have a nutritionist or dietitian you can recommend in your area, websites like Renaissance Periodization and Working Against Gravity give people kind of those generalized templates we talked about at the start of the episode. Maybe not the best, but a good place to start, especially if you don't have that referral source in your area. So I'll post those links here as well in a second, and you all can check those out. So that's all I got. Quick and dirty today. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Happy to talk about this a little bit more. If you have questions, shoot them to us. Email info@ice.physio, here on Facebook, over on Instagram. Don't forget to hit Gut Check Thursday this weekend if you haven't yet. 5 rounds for time, 10 push-ups, 20 sit-ups, 30 air squats. I saw some of you front-loaded the air squats, which will make the workout faster. So make sure you do it in the right order and get the right stimulus. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your weekend.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.